Hello again, this is Today on ENCA. Now, there are growing calls to extend the COVID-19 social relief of distress and caregiver grants. Some civil society organizations also want the 350 Rand grant to be increased to 585 Rand. Now, the Institute for Economic Justice warns that a discontinuation of these grants will lead to a humanitarian crisis. Let's discuss this with Neil Coleman. He is from the Institute. Neil, good morning and thanks so much for your time. And just to paint a picture, and let's just sort of, bring it home for those who don't have to worry about things like this, those who aren't relying on grants to get from day to day, just those who are receiving these grants. How are they managing on this? I can't imagine that it's nearly enough to help them get from week to week even at this point. Absolutely,
Uveka. If you imagine that a grant of 350 Rand for a month has to get an unemployed person and their dependents through the month. I mean, it's unbelievable to imagine the struggles that people have. And a caregiver's grant is 500 Rand. So these are tiny amounts that were introduced by the government when the COVID lockdown hit, under the assumption that 6 months later, which is how long the grants were set for, the economy would have bounced back and these people would have been able to sort of improve their living standards, etc. But all the research shows that the effects of the lockdown continue to be devastating for many, many people. And between the people getting the caregiver's grant of 500 Rand and the COVID special grant of 350 Rand, there are almost 13 million South Africans receiving these grants. And those grants are going to stop at the end of October. If you imagine that each person getting that grant is supporting at least, conservatively 2 dependents, you add the 26 million to those 13 million and you get 39 million, which means 2 out of 3 South Africans will be affected by the withdrawal of these grants. So this is not a small matter. This is a humanitarian crisis. The SALDRU, the NIDS CRAM survey showed that over 1/3 of South Africans in June didn't have any money to buy food. So we're talking about a dire humanitarian situation here.
And that doesn't even take into account, Neil, those who have lost their jobs along the way, those who are not receiving these grants and who a month or 2 from now are probably going to find themselves joining these numbers. And what do we do then? That's I mean, humanitarian crisis, I think, is an understatement.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the Statistics South Africa second quarter survey found that 2.2 million jobs were lost over the March to June period, and the NIDS CRAM survey found that about 2.8 million jobs were lost. So it's in that sort of realm, and we had a crisis before the COVID crisis. So already our economy was in dire straits, many families struggling to put food on the table. And that's why when we say extend and increase the grants to 585 Rand, which is itself a very small amount, the 585 comes from what's called the food poverty line, which means that unless you get that amount of income a month, you're unable to put enough food on the table to essentially stop your family from starving. So this is a very, very small ask, and the cost of doing this for another 5 months till the end of the financial year next year would be less than 40 billion Rand, which, while it sounds a lot to some people, is between 1% and 2% of our budget. And if we say that's for 2/3 of the population, then surely that is a very small price to pay. In this situation of extreme corruption, there hasn't been any suggestion that, for example, there's been massive corruption in the payment of the COVID grant or the caregivers grant. These are monies that are going directly to people, as opposed to other projects which are riddled with all sorts of problems.
Well, Neil, as we know, I mean, we haven't seen any indication that there's going to be any kind of extension. And like you say in your statement, the National Treasury has said in various platforms, including in NEDLAC, that it's not considering doing that. That is not going to provide for this. So what do you do if this call falls on deaf ears, as it seems to be?
Well, this is outrageous. I mean, it is not at the end of the day a decision of Treasury technocrats. This is something that affects the whole country, and therefore it's a political decision, and our political leadership needs to take responsibility for this, to say to these 2/3 of South Africans, listen, we are not really, we said it was going to be 6 months, the economy hasn't bounced back, too bad, you're on your own. That's an utterly unacceptable approach to take. And Cabinet is meeting today, according to our information, to finalize the budget, which is going to be announced on the 21st of October. So we really hope that they're listening and that they have taken note. The facts, the research, the evidence has been very clearly documented. That's been sent to the leadership of the country, and we hope they are seriously applying their minds to this, and there will be a reversal of this Treasury refusal to engage on this on this proposal.
Right. Neil Coleman, thank you so much for that. Yes, a humanitarian crisis awaits us if something is not done.